Hi, this is Brett Cenkus with Cenkus Law and Braaten Woods. I'm an M&A advisor and an M&A lawyer. If you like this video, check out merger-resources.com. There's all sorts of videos, articles, templates, checklists, tools, all about mergers and acquisitions, and all free all the time, so check it out. Okay, this is the second video in a three-part series about M&A motivations, or why buyers buy businesses. And these are reasons that buyers buy. These are my reasons, grouped into three broad categories. So the first video, we looked at synergistic reasons. Synergy, which comes in a number of different forms: cost-cutting, cross-selling, financial synergy. This video is about expansion reasons to buy a business. So synergy is generally, I said, viewed as kind of defensive. It's about kind of protecting and your fiefdom, protecting from competitors, increasing kind of market share, but all in this idea of like protecting your turf, if you will. Whereas expansion is much more offensive in nature, not offensive. Offensive, it's kind of going out and getting something. So there's overlap and nuance and so forth, but this is kind of a helpful way, I find, to think about different motivations. So there's four different broad types of expansion reasons. There were four synergy reasons, there's four expansion reasons, and in video 3 there'll be four miscellaneous reasons. So the first is to acquire a particular competency that the buyer does not already have in-house. And this can be a technology, this can be a way of doing things, this can be kind of, a big sort of old, like traditional type of company might acquire a more innovative business. I mean, they might also squeeze the innovation out of it, but that happens. But they might acquire a more innovative competitor just to kind of shake up their culture. But a very good example of acquiring a competency is when Apple purchased Siri in 2010. So Apple wasn't buying into a market per se, and we'll talk about that. That's another one of the expansion reasons, or kind of subcategories of expansion. But they were buying a technology that they needed to bring a product to market. So that was in 2010. That was before the voice was really anything. Siri was really the first big, I think, voice product to hit the market. So again, Siri wasn't out there with customers and things like that. Apple wasn't really buying into an existing market. They were acquiring a technology, a competency that they needed to finish out or create a product or service and bring it to market. Second expansion reason is to acquire certain talent. And there's a term that's been around for not that long, certainly not my whole career. It's really kind of started seeing it in the past, 5-6 years or so. It's probably been around a little longer than that, called an acquire hire. And it's very common in technology companies, technology, media, telecom, but the TMT companies, technology, media, telecom. And what they're really doing there in acquire hire, there's really not products or services that the buyer's trying to get. There's really not particular competencies or technologies. They're wanting people. They're wanting to acquire, and it's often engineering teams that they really are viewed as great teams. And the drivers for those deals, and in Silicon Valley, you can see as much as $1 million or so per head paid for those deals. So real money. The driver for that is going to be to understand the cohesion, the desire for that team to stick around, the cultural fit, which is always important. I've talked about that before, but particularly if all you're acquiring of these people, and you can't force them, you cannot force them to work for you, particularly in California, where non-competes are exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, to enforce against employees. You really have to know that this team is going to stick around and want to be part of the group. But those are pretty common in tech world. They're not as common outside of that. A good example of one is Facebook purchased a company called Chain Space, which is a blockchain-oriented company. They, as far as I can tell and what has been reported, Facebook just wanted the people. There was really not much in the way of product or service, and there was no real market or customers to acquire. Third is to buy into a new market, and that market can be either a product that you're in, or product or service that the existing company is not in, or it can be a geographic region. So one or the other. I probably could have split those up into two, but we're treating like buying into a new market. So as opposed to a competency, when Apple bought Siri, they were buying a technology to create a product or service. With this type of expansion activity, the company, the buyer, is purchasing an existing, some sort of buying into an existing market. They're making the decision rather than build it organically, and that's what Apple was doing. They were building a voice product organically, but they needed to buy a technology to make it work. Here, a company would be making a decision just to buy into an existing market, right? So a good example is Facebook's acquisition of WhatsApp. And that really would be best, I think, slotted into this. They were buying into an existing market. And Facebook did this because they had struggled up to that point they'd struggled to be successful at mobile messaging. They didn't have a big presence there. And Facebook is not viewed as a product that's very, teen oriented. It's kind of skews its users a little bit older, people like me. And so there, WhatsApp had younger participation, younger people on that app, and it was mobile messaging, just powerhouse. So Facebook made the decision, rather than we're not going to be able to catch up here, let's just buy into this market. So it can be, in that case, it was buying into a product, which kind of gave them, that product, mobile messaging, but also gave them buying into a market in a way of younger viewers. And again, these can sometimes be buying your way into a particular geographic region. So you'll often see the driver for international M&A is to buy into a new country, because doing business in one country versus another is almost always very, very different. You can argue that doing business in Texas versus New Mexico is not that different. There's going to be nuances for sure, but compared to the United States versus Mexico, or the United States versus Singapore, or wherever, right? There's just vastly different ways of doing business, legally, culturally, how you treat employees, just everything. So buying that way into the geographically is often the way that things are done cross-border. The fourth type of expansion reason for M&A expansion is getting into a new channel. Okay, so a good example of this would be PetSmart. A number of years ago, bought a company called Chewy, and they both sold dog toys, pet products, things like that. But PetSmart really didn't have a very good e-commerce presence, and Chewy did. That was its main outlet. So this is a little different in my mind from buying a competency, a technology or something, or buying into a particular market. This is because really their markets were the same. The customers they served were really the same. The products and things, there was a lot of overlap, but this is buying into a particular channel. So think about it in terms of a supply channel, being able to get supply from certain places, or distribution. So in that case, PetSmart was great at retail. They had lots and lots of stores out in the world, physical stores, but they didn't have a great presence. I think Walmart's acquisition of Jet, and I'm not sure that one has worked out, but that was Walmart just hadn't really successfully been able to hit that channel well. So there's a little overlap when you think about Facebook and WhatsApp versus this, but I still think enough of a distinction to treat them as separate sort of subcategories of expansion activity. So those are four motivations for a business to buy another, and that are expansion oriented. Again, not defensive. They're more about let's continue to conquer the world. In the next video, we're going to talk about 4 just miscellaneous motivations. So join me in that one.